So recently, Heisenberg let everybody know, just to remind everybody, there's never been any happy or successful black people in the United States of America. Everybody's got a 24/7 upset rage thing going on about slavery, which ended over 150 years ago. Here he is.
How did we get to a point where we treated other human beings as slaves? And we're okay with that.
What do you
When I
mean?
when I see the
What do you mean okay with it? I don't know anybody today who's okay with slavery, and it did end during something called the Civil War, where a bunch of white people killed a bunch of white people to end it. So what the hell is he talking about? People are still. What kind of world is this guy living in?
the Make America Great Again, my comment is, do you accept that that could possibly be construed as a racist remark?
No, because we're not stupid.
And most people, a lot of people go, how could that be racist? Make America great again? I said, so just ask yourself from an African American experience.
Oh, he's going to tell us about the African American experience. He knows so much about it. Well, this is what I know. I grew up in Chicago. I'm Generation X. I'm in my 50s. I've never lived through segregation. I've always been around black people from pre-kindergarten on. Always around black people. Went to a public high school. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about. From what I can see, and because of my background and in 7 years in manufacturing, I've interacted with more people of different races than most, just because of where I grew up and the industry I was in for a while. And from what I can see, everybody's an individual with individual experiences. Not everybody grew up miserable. Not everybody grew up happy. But if you want to know what somebody's childhood was like, you have to talk to them. Just don't assume because of what color they are that they were miserable or horribly oppressed. And that's what these white leftist men do. And I'm guessing they don't have the experience that I do. When I went to high school, nobody gave a shit what race you were. In high school, you were a brain, you were a jock, or you were a nobody. And at that time, I happened to be a nobody, a C-minus student that wasn't into sports. After high school, I tried to completely turn that around and be an A student and start working out and try to be both the brain and the athlete. But during high school, nobody cared. So what world is this guy living in? And to assume, and this is what white leftists do. I've experienced this. I was at work going to lunch with a white leftist and a black woman, and I don't know how the subject got started, but the white leftist was like, and I can't even imagine what kind of oppression you've gone through growing up in the United States. And I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you assuming she's been through anything? And I knew her, and we talked a lot, and I knew her childhood, and for everything I understood, she had a great childhood. Brothers and sisters. Her father was the principal of a grade school. She grew up with both parents. As far as I could tell, she had a better childhood than I did. So what the hell is going through their minds where they think every single black person had this miserable life and they've gone through all this horrible oppression? If anything, that seems kind of stereotyping. That seems kind of racist, and it does seem that the white leftists are the most racist white people of all. It's the white leftist. They try to say it's the conservative, but conservatives don't think that black people are disabled and unable to get a voter ID. I can't imagine, and I think the most racist thing in the world is have lower expectations for people based on race. But anyway, let's see what else this pinhead has to say.
When was it ever great in America for the African American?
Well, it was never great for absolutely all white people either. Imagine white coal miners having to work in a mine all day, breathing in all that soot. I mean, what's the average lifespan of a white male coal miner? So it's not like things were always great for everything. But when Trump talks about make America great again, his generation has to be brought into context. He's talking about the 1950s. Now, why were the 1950s great? Well, 1940s, we defeated Germany. We defeated Japan. We drove Germany out of Africa. We drove Germany out of Europe. And we provided aid. We provided blankets and foods to all these war-torn nations. Their factories and towns were destroyed. Our factories were still going. So we beat the shit out of the bad guys, and we provided a whole lot of aid for people in need. We were the good guys, and we had that pride in the 1950s. And what else happened in the 1950s? Well, with all the people killed in war, and by the way, in the war, it was black people and white people fighting in this war. And racism disappears when you're on the battlefront with your squad, and you got people of different races. You don't care. You become brothers, and they're relying on you to cover them, and you're relying on them to cover you. That racism crap disappears real quick. And soldiers coming back from World War II helped ease the racism and better race relations. In the 1950s, it was encouraged, get married, have kids. Let's bring back the population that was lost. If you were a man, women were encouraged to stay home and have kids, and a lot of people that would have been competing against you for jobs died in the war. So for men, there was a lot of opportunity. And we had this economy where one person working can raise a family. And that wasn't just for white people, it was for black people too. Obviously, you can argue there was more opportunity for white people during that time. I'm not arguing that there isn't. And then obviously we have the 60s with the civil rights movement. I went to high school in the 80s, went to a public school. We weren't obsessed with segregation. We weren't obsessed with slavery because that crap was so long ago. We weren't obsessed with that stuff. And when you look at the 80s, I think the 80s was a great time for black people. Number one television show, The Cosby Show. Number one musical artist, Michael Jackson. Number one talk show, Oprah Winfrey. Number one athletes, Michael Jordan, Mike Tyson. 1980s is when Neil deGrasse Tyson started making his television appearances. And now when people think of somebody who's really smart, they think of a black man. They think of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And let's talk about progress. I mean, he's still talking about slavery. Like, that's where we're still at over 150 years later. Like, no progress has been made. What is the mindset of these people? And how does he think? How do these people think they're white saviors? How do they think they're doing anything for black people by saying, hey, remember slavery? Remember slavery? Remember slavery? Aren't you angry? Aren't you miserable? I mean, what the hell? These people are sick.
When was it great? So if you're making it great again, it's not including them. So,
well, let's look at how few single mothers there were in the 1950s. Let's talk about how strong the family was. Let's talk about how many two-parent homes there were. Well, that's certainly better than it is now. I mean, you look at the huge percentage of single black women raising kids and increasing single white women. Less people are getting married and less people are even having kids. How is that going in the right direction? So make America great again? Well, you go back to the same two-parent households we had in the 50s. That would be making things great again.
it's to teach us in the woke world to open up and accept the possibilities that our privilege has created blind spots.
Your white guilt has created blind spots. And it's pathetic. And once again, how does this help black people? So please, if you're white and you see somebody who's black, don't treat them like they're a lost kitten. Don't treat them like they have special needs. Treat them like you do anybody else. Don't assume they've had a horrible life in this country. If you want to know what kind of childhood they've had, if you want to know what kind of life they've had, talk to them. Maybe they've had it worse than you. Maybe they've had it better. And that's all I got. So thanks for watching. Until next time.
Cisco, do we have to leave all our good friends now?
Only until next time, Pancho. Adios, amigos.